A group of 8 humanitarian organizations says Israel has failed to meet Washington's demands for increased humanitarian access to Gaza. Last month, the Biden administration gave Israel a 30-day deadline to get 350 aid trucks of aid into Gaza every day. Al Jazeera's Gabriel Elizondo reports from the UN in New York.
This report is pretty extensive. The humanitarian organizations that were behind it used public source data, tracking mechanisms on trucks, and media reports to ultimately reach their findings that gave Israel almost across the board failing grades when it comes to delivering aid to Gaza, particularly in the last 30 days. Now, the humanitarian organizations behind the report are very credible. Anera, the Norwegian Refugee Council, Oxfam, CARE, Med Global, Refugees International, Save the Children, and Mercy Corps.
There's been a dramatic backtracking and deterioration of the circumstances in the period since the letter was sent 30 days ago. So basically, all of the things are moving in the wrong direction. And chief among them is the fact that almost no humanitarian assistance is making it inside, certainly nothing that could provide for the population at scale.
That level is nowhere near what we need to support the more than 2 million civilians.
On Tuesday, the Security Council will hold an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Gaza, particularly another new report from last week that said famine could be just days away. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera at the United Nations in New York.
As we've been talking about, the situation is dire right across the Gaza Strip. According to UNRWA, the number of aid trucks entering Gaza has fallen to its lowest level in 11 months, with just 30 trucks a day on average in October. That's just 6% of the commercial and humanitarian supplies allowed into Gaza before the war. The UN says at least 600 trucks a day needed to meet basic needs. The US is now urging Israel to increase aid access, requesting a minimum of 350 trucks a day into Gaza. The UN says more than 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza are facing extremely critical levels of hunger. Alicia Phillips Mandaville is Chief Operating Officer at Anera, the American and Near East Refugee Agency and Organization. She's joining us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Ma'am, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Anera was one of the organizations that contributed to that report that Gabriel Elizondo was talking about. From your experience, talk to us about the kind of impact that it's having on people in Gaza not to be able to get the aid that they need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for the chance to join you today. It's important to be able to talk a little bit about this and to talk about what the report finds, because it is having such a tremendous impact and there is so much suffering because aid is not getting in at the levels that we need to see to meet really basic human needs. So I think this report, as your previous speaker said, really was issued in part because on October 13th, the United States Secretaries of State and Defense issued a letter to their counterparts in the government of Israel and demanded some really concrete progress on very specific things that would enable more aid to reach more people in need, more civilians in Gaza. To reverse this spiraling humanitarian crisis that I think we see unfolding and that many people have described in great detail, and I know you've been sharing footage of. So 8 different humanitarian organizations were a part of this effort, and the desire to use a scorecard to really be concrete and to help people be on the same page about how specific we're able to be about the kinds of actions that we need to see if we want more aid to get in, which we do. These organizations dedicated to making sure that families, the children, the elderly, civilians in Gaza really have ability to access the things that they need for basic lives and livelihoods. So the scorecard actually uses a red, yellow, and green metric so that you can see really clearly where it's red, something has stopped. Where it's yellow, we need to see more progress if we want more aid to get in. And sadly, there's no green on the scorecard at this time. So I think the scorecard really says that we need more action if we want more aid to save more lives. And we just haven't seen it yet.
Talk to us about the kind of logistics that an organization like yours has to go through in order to be able to get aid into Gaza. Because for a long time, we were showing pictures of very long lines of trucks that were waiting on the Egyptian side of the border in Rafah, for example, the Rafah crossing, waiting to get in. Talk to us about what the circumstances are like now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's easiest to maybe go back to some of the numbers of trucks that people are talking about. Before October of 2023, we were seeing over 500 trucks a day meeting the needs of the population in Gaza. The Secretary's letter calls for 350 trucks a day. So that's not even the total amount that we were seeing before October of last year. Over the last few weeks, I think some of your previous guests have said we're seeing, according to our counts, we've seen something like an average of 42 a day. And on the worst days, we've seen less than 10. So even if you just do basic math, you can see the needs not getting met. The logistics side of it is a big piece. And when you look at that scorecard, you see the actions that we're calling for are really specific because they unlock the logistics needed for more aid to get in, for more food, basic medical supplies like gauze, really core and basic things that people need. That includes things like the numbers of trucks that are allowed through checkpoints, the number of border crossings that are open on a daily basis, and even the hours that they're open, the number of vetted drivers that can drive those trucks to the checkpoints, and then I think in particular access to the north so that we can get food to where the crisis really is extreme.
How much of a problem is it? I would imagine the shelf life essentially of some of the medical supplies that you're trying to get in, as well as obviously in relation to food and perhaps dairy stuffs, whatever's going in terms of foodstuffs there. One would imagine that if it's been kept on one side of the border but it can't get in, there is a risk that a lot of that stuff may spoil, it may go over its use-by date. And how much of that does that factor into what can eventually be taken into the Strip?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a concern we definitely share. And I know all the organizations in this committee that signed on to the scorecard do as well. We put a tremendous amount of energy into managing an inventory of things that are desperately needed, whether that is foodstuffs or whether that is core medical supplies, some of which have a shelf life like gauze of quite some time, others of which do expire. So we are constantly managing to try to make sure that the supplies we can get in that need to get in quickly to be used, get in first. But when you have barriers at crossings, when you don't have enough drivers, when you can't get enough trucks through, this is something I think that we really worry a lot about and is just heartbreaking. You hear the reports of, doctors rationing gauze at medical facilities, and yet, you've got a warehouse in which maybe you have some, but you cannot get it through. And just, I think it's heartbreaking to see that something so close to being able to provide basic aid and comfort, and it's not able to get through.
Alicia Phillips Mandaville, we appreciate you being with us on Al Jazeera, ma'am. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.